Just days after the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office announced its body camera program, attorneys are warning that videos only tell a portion of the story. That was the message at a presentation by State Attorney Melissa Nelson tonight. She and other prosecutors invited the audience to create videos as part of an exercise. They caution that while video evidence can be a great tool, it can also mislead based on the angle captured by the camera.
The belief, for a whole bunch of reasons, is that video is inherently more comprehensive, more accurate than other forms of evidence, and I don't think that's the case. We should be as cautious of video footage as we are about every other form of evidence.
JSO says 200 officers will be trained each quarter. A full rollout of the body cameras will take about 2 years.